Okay, chapter 6 is called Why Sylvia Was Happy. Ooh, I should have got a little slurp before I started. Got to turn my lights on before, but got them on now. Chapter 6, When Sylvia Was Happy. I never did understand you, Sylvia, and this last month you've been a perfect enigma to me. With rocking chair in full action, suspended needle with thoughtful expression, Miss Yule had watched her sister for 10 minutes as she sat with her work at her feet, her hands folded on her lap and her eyes dreamily fixed on vacancy. I always was to myself, Prue, and I'm more so, and am more so than ever now, answered Sylvia, waking out of her reverie with a smile that proved it had been a pleasant one. There must be some reason for this great change in you. Come tell me, dear. With a motherly gesture, Miss Yule drew the girl to her knee, brushed back the bright hair, and looked into the face so freely turned to hers. Through all the years they had been together, the elder sister had never seen before the expression which the younger's face now wore. A vague expectancy sat in her eyes, some nameless content sweetened her smile. A beautiful repose replaced the varying enthusiasm, listlessness, and melancholy that used to haunt her countenance and make it such a study. Miss Yule could not read the secret of the change, yet felt its novel charm. Sylvia could not explain it, though penetrated by its power, and for the moment the sisters looked into each other's faces, wondering why each seemed altered. Then Prue, who never wasted much time in speculations of any kind, shook her head and repeated, I don't understand it, but it must be right because you're so improved in every way. Ever since that wild trip up the river, you've been growing quiet, lovable, and cheerful, and I really begin to hope that you will become like other people. I only know that I am happy, Prue. Why it is so, I cannot tell. But now I seldom have the old dissatisfied and restless feeling. Everything looks pleasant to me, everyone seems kind, and life begins to be both sweet and earnest. It's only one of my moods, I suppose, but I'm grateful for it and pray that it may last. So earnestly she spoke, so cheerfully she smiled, that Miss Yule blessed the mood. It's raining. And echoed Sylvia's wish, exclaiming in the next breath with a sudden inspiration, My dear, I've got it. You're growing up. I think I am. You tried to make a woman of me at 16, but it was impossible until the right time came. Can you hear the rain? Which I wouldn't care, but we'll probably have to go pick my van up. Brother. Oh, come on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Should improve anyway, quite a little. Everyone seems so kind, and life began. I suppose I pray that it may be my life. So earnestly she spoke, I may have just read this. So cheerfully she smiled that Miss Yule blessed the mood and echoed Sylvia's wish, exclaiming in the next breath with a sudden inspiration, My dear, I've got it. You're growing up. Oh, I already read all that. Well, my dear, go on as you've begun, and I shall be more than satisfied. What merrymaking is on foot tonight? Mark and these friends of his keep you in constant motion with their riding, rowing, and rambling excursions. And if it did not agree with you so excellently, I really should like a little quiet after a month of bustle. They're only coming up as usual, and that reminds me that I must go and dress. There's another new change, Sylvia. You never used to care what you wore or how you looked, no matter how much time and trouble I expended on you in your wardrobe. Now you do care, and it Yeah, and it does my heart good to see you always charmingly dressed and looking your prettiest, said Miss Yule, with the satisfaction of a woman who heartily believed in costume as well as all the other elegances and proprieties of fashionable life. Am I ever that, Prue? Asked Sylvia, pausing on the threshold with a shy yet wistful glance. Ever what, dear? Pretty. Always so to me, and now I think everyone finds you very attractive because you try to please and seem to succeed delightfully. Sylvia had never asked that question before, but never seemed to know or care, and could not have chosen a more auspicious moment for her frank inquiry than the present. The answer seemed to satisfy her, and smiling at some blithe anticipation of her own, she went away to make a lampless toilet in the dusk, which proved how slight a hold the feminine passion for making oneself pretty had yet taken upon her. The September moon was up and shining clearly over garden, lawn, and sea when the sound of voices caught her down. At the stair foot she paused with a disappointed air, for only one hat lay on the hall table, and the glance showed her only one guest, with Mark and Prue. She strolled irresolutely through the breezy hall, looked out at either open door, sung a little to herself, but broke off in the middle of a line, and as if following a sudden impulse, went out into the mellow moonlight, forgetting of uncovered head or dewy damage to the white hem of her gown. Halfway down the avenue she paused before a shady nook and looked in. The evergreens that closed it made the seat doubly hard to see. No. Doubly dark to eyes injured to the outer light, and seen a familiar seeming figure sitting with its head upon its hand. Sylvia leaned in, saying with a daughterly caress, "Why, what is my romantic father doing here?" The sense of touch was quicker than that of sight, and with an exclamation of surprise, she had drawn back before Warwick replied, "It is not the old man, but the young one who is romancing here." "I beg your pardon. We've been waiting for you. What thought is so charming that you forgot us all?" Sylvia was a little startled, else she would scarcely have asked so plain a question. But Warwick often asked much blunter ones, always told the naked truth without prevarication or delay, and straightway answered, "The thought of the woman whom I hope to make my wife." Sylvia stood silent for a moment, as if intent on fastening in her hair the delicate spray of hop bells just gathered from the vine, but formed a leafy frame for the graceful picture which she made standing with uplifted arms behind the ark. When she spoke, it was to say, as she moved on toward the house, "It's too beautiful a night to stay indoors, but Prue is waiting for me, and Mark wants to plan with you about our ride tomorrow. Shall we go together?" She beckoned, and he came out of the shadow, showing her an expression which she had never seen before. His face was flushed, his eye unquiet, his manner eager yet restrained. She had seen him intellectually excited many times, never emotionally ill till now. Something wayward yet warm in this new mood attracted her, because so like her own. But with a tact as native as her sympathy, she showed no sign of this, except in the attentive look she fixed upon him as the moonlight bathed him in its splendor. He met the glance, seemed to interpret it all right, but did not answer its unconscious inquiry, for pausing, he asked abruptly, should a rash promise be considered binding when it threatens to destroy one's peace? Sylvia pondered an instant before she answered slowly. If the promise was freely given, no sin committed in its keeping, and no peace troubled but one's own, I should say yes. Still pausing, he looked down at her with that unquiet glance as she looked up with her steady one, and with the same anxiety he asked, would you keep such a promise inviolate, even though it might cost you the sacrifice of something dearer to you than your life? And she thought again and again, looked up, answering with the sincerity that he had taught her. It might be unwise, but if the sacrifice was not one of principle, or something that I ought to love more than life, I think I should keep the promise as religiously as an Indian keeps a vow of vengeance. As he spoke, some recollection seemed to strike Warwick like a sudden stab. The flush died out of his face, the fire from his lips. Fire from his lips. Dang, where'd that come from? And an almost grim composure fell upon him as he said low to himself, with a forward step as if eager to leave some pain behind him, it is better so. For his sake I will leave all to time. Sylvia saw his lips move, but caught no sound till he said with a gravity that was almost gloom, I think you would, therefore beware how you bind yourself. With such verbal bonds. Let us go in. They went, Warwick to the drawing room, but Sylvia ran upstairs for the Berlin wools, which, in spite of heat and the sure staining of fingers, were to be wound that night according to contract, for she kept a small promise as incredulously as she would have done a greater one. And I'm going to stop there, and I know that wasn't much, but both together, it's pretty good. Alrighty, I'm going to get my stuff together, and we have Nitpick's sock yarn to look at today. Just open drawers and find yarn to show y'all. Love y'all. Be sweet, don't be ugly. Hope to see you in a little while. Live at 5 Eastern. Bye-bye.